What happens when a CEO goes undercover and sees a manager deny time off to someone who needs it for something personal but not before humiliating them in front of the whole team? Darren Ross had built his career from the ground up. Years back, he bought a struggling chain of 15 fast casual restaurants across 3 states. He rebranded, restructured, and rebuilt them into something profitable. But success came with distance. Lately, employee complaints had been bubbling up: overworked staff, high turnover, and a constant string of exit interviews filled with the same phrases: no support, management doesn't care, and they treat us like machines. He'd had enough of hearing it secondhand. Darren decided to go undercover as a new hire. He chose store number 9, a busy location just outside Cleveland. It had the highest customer volume and the highest employee turnover. That contrast didn't sit right with him. They wouldn't recognize him. None of the frontline employees had ever met him in person. Even the store manager, a woman named Brenda, had only seen him once during a corporate Zoom call nearly 2 years before. For the disguise, he dyed his hair a darker brown, trimmed his beard close, and wore thick prescription glasses. He dressed in standard new hire attire and used the alias Danny. Corporate had quietly added him to the training schedule through the district office without flagging it as unusual. His first day started with a flurry. The kitchen was understaffed, the lunch rush was brutal, and Brenda was barking orders from the back office while barely stepping onto the floor. The assistant manager, a 20-something guy named Jacob, seemed like he was trying to hold the place together, but his hands were full. Darren kept his head down. He scrubbed dishes, restocked napkins, and helped prep ingredients. His trainer, a cook named Naomi Walters, was sharp and fast. Late 20s, no nonsense, and clearly the one holding the kitchen together. "You've done this before?" she asked, side-eyeing him as he chopped tomatoes with decent speed. "Worked in a diner years ago," Darren said. She nodded. "You're not bad. Most new hires cut their thumb off by now." At around 3 p.m., the rush died down. A few staff clocked out. Naomi stayed behind to clean the line. Darren was wiping down trays near the back when he heard voices rising near the office. "I'm not asking for a whole week. Just 2 days. My son has a school evaluation. He's autistic. It's a big deal." It was Naomi. Her voice was calm, but there was tension underneath. Brenda replied, loud enough for half the store to hear. "Then find someone to cover your shift. I'm not rearranging the whole schedule because you can't plan your life." "I only found out about the meeting yesterday," Naomi said, quieter now. "It's not something I can push." "Not my problem," Brenda snapped. "We're short-staffed. You go, you're walking off the job." Darren froze. He looked toward the front. Jacob stood at the register, eyes locked on the counter, pretending not to hear it. A younger cashier looked uncomfortable. No one spoke. Naomi stepped out of the office a moment later, face flushed. She walked past Darren, grabbed her apron, and muttered, "Taking my break." Darren followed her outside, unsure what to say. She sat on the curb, elbows on her knees, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Sorry you had to hear that. What if you just go anyway?" She gave a dry laugh. "And lose my job? Can't. I'm barely keeping up with rent as it is. My son's therapy isn't covered by insurance. I need this job." Darren sat beside her. "You deserve better than that." She looked at him, eyebrows raised. "You're new. You don't know how it works here." He didn't reply. Not yet. Inside, Brenda was chatting on the phone behind the office desk, sipping a soda. No sign of the schedule being touched. Darren kept working for the rest of the shift, watching closely. Brenda never once helped on the floor. She didn't speak to the customers, didn't bus a single table. When a fryer overflowed with oil, Naomi and Jacob handled it. When a customer spilled a drink, the cashier cleaned it. Brenda stayed in the back. By the end of the day, Darren had seen enough. He returned the next morning, still undercover, but now with a plan forming in his head. He didn't want to act too fast. He needed to be sure. But by lunchtime, Brenda gave him more fuel. A dishwasher named Samuel, who looked no older than 19, asked if he could leave 30 minutes early to attend a GED class. Brenda rolled her eyes. You kids think life bends around your little hobbies. No, we need you here. Samuel didn't argue, just nodded and kept scrubbing trays. Darren clenched his jaw. That was strike two. He stepped out during break and called the district office. Quietly, he requested the full employee schedule for the location. It showed something interesting. Brenda had given herself 3 days off that week and left the team scrambling. When he returned inside, Naomi was covering 2 stations while Jacob fixed a broken soda machine. Brenda, still in the back. Darren knew what he had to do. Tomorrow he'd show up early and not as Danny. Darren arrived the next morning 2 hours before opening. No disguise, no apron, just a navy button-down, jeans, and a quiet determination that came from watching too much go wrong too quickly. He waited at the back entrance, arms crossed, until the first employee arrived. Jacob nearly dropped his keys when he spotted him. Mr. Ross? I didn't know you were coming today. I know, Darren said evenly. Unlock the door, please. Jacob fumbled with the lock. As they stepped inside, the kitchen lights flickered on, revealing the cluttered prep area still littered with trays and a stained mop bucket from the night before. Is Brenda in yet? Darren asked. No, she usually comes in around 10:30. Sometimes later if it's a slow morning. What time is she scheduled for? Jacob hesitated. 9. Darren didn't comment. He walked the floor slowly, taking in every detail: the sticky tiles underfoot, the burnt residue crusted on the flat top grill, the absence of any prep work done for the breakfast rush. Who was closing last night? Same as always. Me, Naomi, and Sam. Brenda left around 6. Darren turned to face him. That's 3 people to close a restaurant during dinner rush and clean afterward? Jacob rubbed the back of his neck and didn't answer. By 7:30, Naomi arrived, visibly surprised to see Darren standing in the kitchen. You're the guy from yesterday, she said. I am. My name's Darren Ross. I own this company. She stared at him, slack-jawed. You're kidding. No. And I'm not here for show. I saw what happened yesterday. I'm staying until it's fixed. Naomi's mouth tightened, but she gave a single nod. Then I hope you're ready to get your hands dirty. We'll start by fixing the schedule, Darren said. But first, I want to see how this place actually runs. By 8, the first customers began trickling in. Darren worked the line next to Naomi, handling breakfast wraps and keeping pace without slowing her down. He watched how she managed the chaos, balancing orders, answering questions, and helping a new hire named Alina, who was visibly nervous but trying hard. Brenda arrived at 10:40, sunglasses on, coffee in hand. She paused mid-step when she saw Darren. He's the owner, Naomi said flatly, not looking up from the stovetop. Brenda took off her sunglasses slowly. Oh, she said. No one told me you'd be visiting. I didn't want a tour, Darren said. I wanted the truth. Brenda folded her arms defensively. If there's an issue, you should have gone through corporate. There's a chain of command. I've seen how that works here. He turned toward the prep area. Let's talk privately. She followed him to the back office, where he closed the door behind them. The soundproofing was poor. Naomi could still hear muffled voices through the thin wall. Inside, Darren dropped the printout of the weekly schedule onto the desk. You work fewer hours than anyone else here, he said calmly. Explain. I manage remotely. I've earned that flexibility. You're managing people who are drowning. You've got one cook holding the kitchen together, an assistant manager doing triple shifts, and a dishwasher skipping school to meet shift demands. Brenda crossed her arms tighter. They agreed to those schedules. They didn't agree to be ignored. She rolled her eyes. This is a high-turnover industry. If they can't handle it, they're in the wrong line of work. Darren stared at her, cold and unblinking. You threatened to fire someone for asking time off to help her autistic son. Brenda's expression didn't change. We don't make special exceptions. It's not fair to the rest of the team. He stepped closer. You are the reason this store is falling apart. You've created a culture where people are afraid to speak. You don't lead, you manage schedules from a distance, and you treat personal lives like inconveniences. Brenda's face reddened. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I know how to run a location. Not anymore, you don't. She blinked. You're done here, Darren said. Effective immediately. She scoffed. You can't. I just did. He opened the office door and motioned for Jacob. Escort her out. Collect her keys. Brenda didn't argue further. She knew. When the door shut behind her, the kitchen felt different. The tension dropped.
Naomi looked at Darren, eyes narrowing with cautious hope. Is she really gone? Yes, he said. Starting now, this place runs differently. He called a brief staff meeting before the lunch rush. Employees gathered near the back, some still in aprons, others wiping hands on their uniforms. I made a mistake, Darren began. I built this company to be different, to be fair. And somewhere along the line, I let people like Brenda steer it off course. That ends now. No one spoke. Jacob, you're stepping in as acting manager. You've earned that.
Naomi, you're now shift lead, and we'll discuss a raise this week. Samuel will get his GD schedule accommodated. Anyone else with personal needs, you come to me directly until we've got a new manager in place. Naomi raised a brow. You're staying. Darren didn't hesitate. At least a week. Maybe longer. That afternoon, the store ran better than it had in months. Naomi took charge with confidence. Jacob coordinated the front. Darren filled in gaps, taking orders, wiping tables, and unloading a delivery truck when it arrived late and short-staffed. During a quiet lull between waves, Alina approached Darren near the drink station. Is it true? You're the owner. Yes. She hesitated. I almost quit last week. I thought no one cared what was happening here. That's why I came. Because I do. She nodded, then returned to her station. Later that evening, Darren sat with Naomi in the break room, going over the next day's staffing chart. She pointed out the gaps and he took notes. You've got strong instincts, he said. She glanced at the schedule. I've had to.
People don't stay long when they're treated like numbers. That's changing. But I need your help to rebuild this. Real training, real support. Not just lip service. Naomi folded her arms, thoughtful. You serious about this? I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. She nodded once. Then I'm in. The next morning, an HR rep arrived to begin the internal review. Darren had already sent a report to corporate outlining the systemic failures he'd witnessed. Brenda's behavior wasn't an isolated case, it was a symptom of ignored feedback and poor oversight. Before lunch, Darren met again with the entire team. You'll see changes in the next few weeks, better pay structure, more flexible scheduling, and a proper complaint process that doesn't get buried. He paused, letting it sink in. But if any of you ever see something wrong, say something. Don't wait. Don't hope it fixes itself. This company is only as strong as the people in it. Someone in the back, a longtime cashier named Janelle who rarely spoke, raised her hand. Are you gonna check the other stores too? Darren nodded. Starting Monday. Cheers didn't erupt. No applause. Just a quiet, collective sense that for once someone was finally listening. And that was enough. The next few days weren't a turnaround, they were triage. Even with Brenda gone, the store was still deeply understaffed. Darren stayed embedded at the location, working open to close alongside the team. He didn't carry a clipboard or issue speeches, he ran food, stocked dry goods, and stayed on dish duty when the new evening hire, Marcus, called out sick 2 nights in a row. No one was surprised Marcus had been brought in under Brenda's watch and hadn't received a proper orientation. He'd been thrown on the schedule with no explanation of procedures or expectations. Darren spent most of his hours watching how people filled in the gaps left behind by poor leadership. Naomi had stepped up quickly, but she was running on fumes. She worked 6 consecutive shifts, including 2 doubles,
and still came in early to prep. She didn't ask for help, she didn't have time to. On Thursday, Darren caught her leaning against the walk-in cooler, eyes closed, arms crossed over her chest. "You've got 20 minutes, he said, holding out a wrapped sandwich. "Go outside.
Eat. I'm fine. You're running at a pace no one can sustain. If you don't take care of yourself, this place will collapse again. We're stabilizing, not sprinting." She took the sandwich without looking at him. "I'll be back before rush." He didn't push, but he watched her step outside, sit in the alley behind the building, and finally let her shoulders drop. Inside, Jacob was guiding Alina through the new register system Darren had requested from corporate. The old machines lagged during peak hours, causing delays and customer complaints. The replacements weren't perfect, but they were faster and more intuitive, a step in the right direction. "Just tap here to split the order," Jacob instructed. "Then swipe to the modifiers." Alina nodded slowly. "Okay, got it." He didn't rush her. He stood beside her until she repeated the process without prompting. Darren noticed the change. Jacob had always been competent, but now he was becoming confident. With Brenda gone, he wasn't second-guessing every decision. That afternoon, a delivery truck arrived late again. The driver apologized, blaming a mix-up at the distribution hub. Naomi came back from break at the same time and opened the side door. "You want me to check the invoice?" she asked Darren. He shook his head. "I've got it. You go finish your prep." She hesitated, then nodded and headed toward the back. Darren stepped into the truck, scanned the pallets, and started unloading. The driver, a wiry man in his 50s named Paul, watched him from the liftgate. "Didn't expect to see the owner doing freezer pulls," Paul said. "I didn't expect to be needed this much." Paul chuckled. "I've seen a lot of stores. This one's been a mess for months.
"But it feels different now." Darren didn't answer. He just kept moving boxes. Later that evening, as the dinner crowd thinned, a young mother came in with 2 kids and a stroller. Darren was bussing a table nearby. He noticed the cashier, a new hire named Tiana, struggling to keep the toddler from grabbing lids off the counter. Without a word, Naomi stepped in, crouched beside the stroller, and offered the older child a coloring sheet from behind the counter. The mother looked relieved. Tiana caught on and rang up the order with more confidence. It was a small moment, but it said everything.
The team wasn't just surviving anymore. They were starting to care again. But not everyone welcomed the change. On Friday, corporate sent over a temporary manager to fill the gap until Darren could finalize a permanent replacement. His name was Mitch, a transfer from another region with solid numbers and a reputation for tight control. From the moment he walked in, he treated the crew like a checklist. He didn't greet anyone by name. He didn't ask how things were running. He walked the floor with a clipboard, pointing out everything that wasn't up to standard without offering a solution. "These prep containers are 2 inches off regulation spacing," he told Naomi, tapping the edge of a metal shelf. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "They're clean, labeled, and within reach." "That's not the point. Compliance comes before convenience." She didn't argue, but she didn't move them either. Later, Mitch cornered Jacob near the stockroom. "Why are you letting her lead the kitchen?" "Because she knows it better than anyone." "That's not how hierarchy works. You're the acting manager. Act like it." Jacob didn't respond. He just walked away. Darren heard about the exchange an hour later. He waited until the dinner rush ended, then asked Mitch to join him in the office. "How long were you planning to stay on this assignment?" Darren asked, sitting across from him. Mitch leaned back in the chair. 2 weeks minimum. Possibly longer, depending on how much correction this location needs. Darren folded his hands. "You've been here less than 1 day, and I've already had 2 employees express concern about your approach. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to enforce standards. You're not hearing me." This team is rebuilding after months of burnout. They don't need enforcement, they need support. Mitch scoffed quietly. Support doesn't fix poor compliance. And compliance without context is just control. Mitch stood. "If you don't want professionals doing the job, then maybe I'm not the right fit." "You're not." Mitch blinked. "You're letting me go? I'm removing you from this location, effective immediately. You'll report back to your region." "That's highly irregular." So is ignoring the human side of management. Darren stood as well.
Someone who doesn't know their team can't lead them. Mitch left without another word. Outside, Naomi was wiping down the prep table when Darren returned. Did you really send him back? Yes. She exhaled slowly. I didn't think you would. You've earned the benefit of the doubt. She set the rag down. I've worked in places where people like him get promoted for making noise, not progress. You're not in one of those places anymore. That night, Darren stayed late again, helping Jacob secure the safe and run the closing report. When they finished, Jacob leaned against the counter.
When this started, I thought you were just checking a box. Like showing up for PR or something. Darren didn't react. But you stayed. You listened. That doesn't happen. I didn't build this company to be another corporation that forgets its people. Then don't let this be the only store you fix. Darren nodded. It won't be. The next morning, 2 more hires showed up for orientation, part of a new wave of staffing Darren had approved.
He stayed long enough to personally introduce himself, then handed the session off to Naomi, who now had her own training checklist posted above the prep station. As he gathered his things to leave, Naomi walked up beside him. You heading out? For now. I've got 12 other stores to visit. She looked at him for a moment, then said, Don't forget what this felt like. I won't. Darren stepped outside into the morning light. The wind smelled like fryer oil and coffee. Behind him, the doors swung closed, not to shut him out, but to keep the momentum going. He wasn't finished.
Not even close. Darren's second week began at a different store, number 13, on the east side of Pittsburgh. It was smaller, tucked between a laundromat and a cell phone repair shop, with faded signage and a cracked tile floor near the entrance. This one hadn't drawn as many complaints, but the numbers told a different story: decreasing sales, higher refund rates, and a string of departures that hadn't been addressed. He didn't go undercover this time. He walked in just after opening, introduced himself to the morning crew, and asked to speak with the manager. A young woman named Carla emerged from the back, arms folded, her expression unreadable. I wasn't told you'd be visiting, she said. I won't be in your way, Darren replied. I just want to observe and talk to the team. She gave a quick nod and stepped aside. There was no welcome, no offer to show him around. Just a quiet indifference that told him everything he needed to know. The store had 5 employees on shift. 2 up front, 2 in the kitchen, and 1 runner who doubled as a janitor. The moment Darren stepped behind the counter, he saw it. The prep areas were clean but sparse, the energy subdued, and the staff moved like they were waiting for the next problem to land on them. He approached the cashier, a soft-spoken man named Luis who had been with the company for 8 months. How's the store been running lately? Darren asked. Luis glanced at Carla, who stood by the register flipping through a printout. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, he said quietly. You won't, Darren said. I'm here to fix things, not punish honesty. Luis hesitated. We don't really talk much here. Not with her around. You just do your shift and go. Darren looked over at Carla. She was still flipping the same page, eyes locked on the numbers like they'd change if she stared hard enough. Has she been helpful when things go wrong? Luis hesitated again. She just says to figure it out. That same morning, a delivery order came in missing key items. Normally a manager would call the supplier or make adjustments, but Carla simply instructed the staff to make substitutions without checking for dietary restrictions or offering refunds. A customer returned within 30 minutes, upset that her daughter, who had a severe gluten allergy, had been given a flour-based wrap instead of the gluten-free one listed on the receipt. Darren stepped in immediately. Was this substitution cleared with the customer before it was made? He asked. No, Carla said flatly. We didn't have time to call. You could have left it off the order and refunded the item. There's no refund authorization on my profile. You're the store manager. That's not accurate. Carla shrugged. That's what we were told. Darren turned to the customer, offered a full refund and an apology, and handed her a card with his direct email. After she left, he pulled Carla aside. You put a child at risk today, he said. The calm in his voice made the weight of the words even heavier. You didn't check the allergy information and you didn't instruct your team how to handle it. Why? Carla's tone didn't change. It's not my fault the supplier messed up. I'm not asking about the supplier. I'm asking about your decision. She didn't respond. Darren stared at her for a long moment. Go to the office. I'll join you in a minute. Once she was gone, he walked through the kitchen, checking the logs and watching the team. The prep cook, a middle-aged woman named Evelyn, wiped her hands and glanced over. She doesn't talk to us, Evelyn said, voice low. Just posts the schedule and leaves early. We train the new hires ourselves. Last time someone burned themselves, she told them to clock out if they couldn't handle it. How long has that been going on? Since I transferred here. 4 months ago. Darren nodded. Thank you. He walked to the back and entered the office. Carla sat at the desk, arms crossed. You don't seem surprised by what I'm hearing, he said. You came here with your mind made up, didn't you? I came here hoping to be wrong. Carla leaned back in the chair. I'm not here to babysit. I manage the numbers. If they can't handle the floor, that's on them. Darren didn't speak right away. He looked at the schedule on the corkboard. 4 people were listed for double shifts that week. No days off. No notes for time off requests. There were missed breaks marked with an X. Whoever made the notes hadn't even bothered to sign them. You've been with the company nearly a year, he said. But you're not leading. You're occupying a title. She rolled her eyes. This is why nothing changes. You listen to the staff complain and think that's the whole story. No, Darren said. I watch what people do when no one's looking. That tells me the story. He reached for the key ring on the desk. You're being removed from this store permanently. Effective now. Carla didn't protest. She simply stood, grabbed her jacket, and walked out without a word. As soon as she was gone, Darren called the HR director and filed the documentation. Then he stepped back into the kitchen and addressed the team. Your manager will not be returning. I'll be overseeing this location until we bring in someone who understands what leadership means. The room fell quiet, but no one looked surprised. Evelyn set her spatula down. We've been waiting for someone to say that for months. Darren met with each employee individually that afternoon. He asked about their roles, their workloads, their goals. Luis, the cashier, revealed he had been studying customer service management online and wanted to train for a shift lead position. Evelyn said she'd taken 2 new hires under her wing recently but hadn't been compensated for the extra work. He noted every word. The next morning, he brought back Naomi from Store 9 not to take over, but to help train. She walked in, still wearing her own apron, and got to work without hesitation. She wasn't there to give speeches. She showed them how to prep faster, how to stage the line for fewer backups, and how to spot the warning signs of burnout before they turned into resignations. Luis shadowed her closely. By the end of the day, he was calling orders with more confidence and solving register issues without asking for help. Darren stayed until close. He swept the floor, restocked the freezer, and made sure every employee got their full break. He didn't need a title for them to know who he was anymore. By the end of the week, corporate approved a new policy Darren had pushed for. Every manager would now be required to complete quarterly floor hours minimum of 10 hours per month, working shoulder to shoulder with their team, not observing, not supervising, working. He sent the memo to every store himself. 2 weeks later, Store 9 had its new manager in place. Someone Naomi had personally recommended from her own contacts, a former operations lead who had left food service after growing tired of toxic environments. Darren had interviewed him himself and hired him within 48 hours. Naomi returned to her regular shift lead role, but now with hiring input and a pay increase that better matched her responsibilities. Luis was promoted to trainee lead and assigned to assist with onboarding at Store 13. Darren visited both stores once more before stepping away. Not to check up, but to listen. At Store 9, he found Jacob reviewing inventory logs with the new manager. Naomi was on the floor, training a quiet new hire on the grill. At Store 13, Evelyn was leading a team huddle outlining prep goals for the day. Luis was setting up the register for opening, correcting a pricing error on his own tablet.
Darren stood back, hands in his coat pockets, and watched. This wasn't fixed. Nothing in business ever stayed fixed. But it was better. Because the people who showed up every day to carry the weight were finally being seen, supported, and heard. He stepped outside into the cold air, glanced once more at the storefront, then walked toward the car waiting at the curb. He had 10 more stores to visit. And now he knew exactly what to look for.